So again, my name is Michael Erskine. I'm the director of the Educational Technology Center here at MSU Denver, and I'm also kind of the Symposium chair, co-chair, if you will. So we're really excited. Definitely want to welcome you. I want to welcome our remote audience who's participating remotely. If any of you have questions, I'm going to repeat those questions so the remote audience can hear, because you guys are not mic'd up, so don't think I'm just kind of crazy blurting out questions again. So we definitely want to make sure that a remote audience can also hear everything that's going on. So I'm going to introduce the panelists first of all. So on the far end we have Robbie Calderaro, is that correct? So she's from the Community College of Denver. We also have Ann Dakar, right? So from MSU Denver. The reason she's on the panel is she participated in an online task force committee that we recently had, looking at kind of preparing MSU Denver for offering fully online degree programs. We have Kim Hoser from the University of Colorado at Denver. She's an instructional designer, and she has her PhD in educational technology from UNC. Then we also have Carol Peranto. She's from the University of Rockies. Are you all familiar with that institution? Okay, good. So University of Rockies in the Tabor Center, great location, right? So, let's see, who else do we have? We have Sharon from the University of Colorado Springs. And she's an online teaching specialist, is your title, and she's been working in the online realm pretty much since the beginning, 20 years, right? Yep. So very cool. And then our co-moderator is Karen Kammerling, and she may be arriving a little bit late, so I'm hoping she'll be here soon. And she is from the Colorado Mountain College, and she's the instructional chair for online learning there, and she's been involved in online learning since 2003. And she, along with Paul Novak, who's in the back of the room, they're the co-chairs of the e-learning consortium of Colorado, who's kind of the co-sponsor of this event. So thank you everybody for being here, and thank you to our remote audience. I have a series of questions that I'm just going to kind of ask here and kind of set a kind of a tone for you guys. And this is really a conversation, so I want everybody else to feel free to chime in. Do keep in mind that I will repeat some of the questions. So, and this question is for Sharon. So, since the early days of online education, using bulletin boards, HTML, online course developers and instructional designers have had to adapt to a lot of new technologies, new pedagogies that have sort of arisen from this new realm of online learning. And as the new tools continue to come out, evolve, change, I think it's really challenging for instructors and for online course developers, instructional designers to kind of keep up with all those changes. So, Sharon, where do you turn to get the most current information about quality in online course design and delivery?
Okay, well, thank you, Michael. I'm going to answer this in twofold. I'm going to first approach it from the course design, and then I'll talk about the delivery part of it. When I think of course design and looking for information on how to create quality courses, I'm going to go right to Quality Matters. Since those that aren't familiar with Quality Matters, it started out as a FIPSI grant in 2003 with the University of Maryland. They've created and they revise, in fact, last August they revised again their rubric, 8 standards for their quality of education. And for those that are even familiar with Quality Matters, I would encourage you to visit their website. It's qualitymatters.org. From their main menu, if you hover over higher education and you scroll down and click on rubric, down at the very bottom of that page is a searchable database. These are rubrics that are based solidly on research. And there's so many articles that they've based their research on that they have a searchable database. So by the standard, you can do any search and know exactly where they come from. That gives me confidence as a designer to know that they've put that much time and effort, this organization, into creating some standards that we can base our online courses on. Now, the other part of that is Quality Matters does focus a lot on course design. So then we start thinking about the implementation, innovative uses of technology, and how we integrate kind of just innovative strategies, getting the new generation of learners coming in, how do we keep up with that? And I think like a lot of you probably in this audience, I'm going to look for two EDUCAUSE, the Chronicle of Education. Again, these are just places where I might go and browse for articles, keep up with some of their focus groups and things like that. It's places like this organization, too, where we can come together and we can share our ideas, that we can really begin to, get an idea of some of these innovative things. I have a couple newsletters that I'm involved on. I get through email. I find this really good because I can just kind of go through it. If something catches my eye, I can kind of click on it. Another thing that I use a lot is LinkedIn. There's a number of discussion groups right there. I get a digest in my email, and again, it's about browsing, seeing what really, catches my eye. There are a lot of webinars out there. There are a lot of free webinars. Go to your LMS. We use Blackboard. They have their own course standards. They have webinars they offer. They share a lot about how faculty are integrating this. And, and we just also look internally. There are a lot, if you look inside your organization, there are a lot of innovation happening, and really a lot of great ideas that faculty bring. And so being, a team with your colleagues, with the faculty, and sharing that, and just the ideas that can come from that.
And I saw Robbie shaking her head. With the LinkedIn is particularly, any suggestions there on sort of groups? Or?
Well, I found a group called e-learning, and it's great because not only gives updates on research and etc., but also free tools for to use in the classroom and free tools for MOOCs, and it's amazing. I would have never thought that LinkedIn would be so resourceful.
Any other thoughts from the other panelists or even our audience?
Just getting right into it, I just want to chime in by saying that all of the things you said are really helpful, and the feeds from WeSet and things like that, any type of information that you can find. But I'm diving into the MOOCs just to learn how they're doing it, to see how they're designing. What is their purpose? And I'm quite impressed because I know they're gathering a lot of data and learning about learning. So that's another way to do it. Just actually take courses, take those MOOCs and learn from them, because they're putting a lot of money, especially places like edX, where they're putting tons of money into developing and understanding the learner and the environment. So,
I'm kind of curious in our audience, how many of you have participated in a MOOC? Yeah, about a little less than half, looks like. So. That's kind of a good segue to the next question, and this question will be for Robbie. All of you, of course, can chime in. But faculty, and this is kind of publicly, through the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, when they talk about MOOCs, there's one of the quotes, one of the instructors said, teaching a MOOC was one of the greatest experience a faculty could ever have teaching. And others have said that MOOCs are really just a way to replace faculty with cheap online education. So you have some very different perspectives, and just the term MOOC is so incredibly popular. In Google News, for example, in the last 30 days, there was about 8,000 articles, news reports, whatever, that mentioned MOOC. And Google Scholar, there's been about close to 8,000 empirical studies concerning MOOCs as well. So it's a very popular topic, and the popular culture and researchers have sort of grasped onto MOOCs as far as area to explore and are excited about it. But then others, there's a completion rate issue. So usually it's known that about only 7% of people who participate in a MOOC actually complete the MOOC. And so whether you agree whether a MOOC is a good thing or a bad thing, given the disruptive nature of MOOCs, whether it's a benefit or a drawback, how do you feel that quality is important to the success of a MOOC?
I believe that quality is very important because, as in a classroom, if you just slap some content online or you just dump your students with information, they're not going to get anything. I remember taking a class, a MOOC on gamification, and maybe it was geared towards gamers, and I'm not a gamer, but it took me every single time 20 minutes to find the information that I needed to complete. Then I take a lot of Coursera courses, and I just love them. They are organized the same way. Every course has access to video lectures weekly, or a section just for videos, so I don't have to spend 20 minutes trying to find the location of the information I want to get. On top of that, the technology that is being used is incredible, because if you think of the flipped classroom where students watch videos at home and then go to class to complete activities, those are similar to the flipped classroom because the videos that they produce are really high quality. And there's just a new technology is coming up. It's called Lecturescape, and it allows the teacher to set important points throughout the lecture and the students to mark where they have difficulties and etc. It's not out yet, but they said that it will come out soon. And MOOC has also evolved into society kind of building, because there's a program called Pivot Report, something like that, I'll be more sure later, that allows people with similar interests to work on the same project, and that is used also by corporations. Now, referring to completion, because MOOCs are not accredited, so to speak, the person who accesses them is a different type of person. I am a graduate and I want to learn more. They have incredible courses on gamification. I even took one on app development, one on cooking from China. So you imagine that. And I don't really need to do the assignments, and I just need to know what they talk about, so that if I, as an adult learner, if I want to learn more, I can continue. But at the same time, it would be a good tool for students, undergrad, and everybody who wants to learn about a topic. I always make this joke. What if you want to be a doctor, but then when you go into the profession, you discover that you don't like blood? That's kind of hard. And access in a MOOC class can give you that, because you don't have the constraints of a college where you have to take it. You can just drop off if you don't like it. And on the other side, Coursera has certification that most probably they have it because some employers see it as a valuable thing for their employee to have, or even for the resume. Not to mention it's free, so it really opens a lot of possibilities for everybody and for every type of audience.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in because I am like a MOOC failure person, and I have tried MOOCs several times, and I've always got the best of intentions when I try a MOOC. I want to really learn this interesting topic, and I actually think I have had the opportunity to observe some very well-designed MOOCs, I think out of Georgia State, and still I was not able to stay with it, and I've thought about that and thought about that. Part of it was I felt overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Personally, my learning style is I like to feel like part of a community and part of a group or part of a team, and I totally did not get that from the MOOC. And I just felt like I was wading through a lot of content just to kind of pull out what it was that I needed. Mm-hmm. And I must admit, I tried it for about a week, and then I dropped out.
And it's interesting you say that, because I'm, totally I just don't get the concept from a design standpoint of why you would want to put that, a large number of students into a class and think that's going to be successful. But, interesting enough, we had a faculty member that's enrolled in one of our programs, and she shared in a discussion forum this week that she was enrolled in a class with 3,500 people, and I'm assuming that it's a MOOC, she didn't call it a MOOC, but she said it was so well designed, the course and the content, and how she integrated video and how she made them feel really part of that course. Mm-hmm. She found it a very valuable experience. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I would like to add that, yes, I can totally feel that. And I teach online classes, and I try to really build a community. And in one of the gamification class that I took through Coursera was awesome, because, first of all, the videos were short. They stopped and asked you questions, and the content was amazing. Plus, they had transcripts, so that if I kind of dozed off, I can still read it. And also, they had specific discussion groups. And not only for, okay, this doesn't work, how do I do it? But also, okay, I'm interested in this, how do I apply it? And I got to know some really nice persons I'm still in contact with. And one, I think, is in Europe.
No, and I think your point is really well taken. If the MOOC is well designed and structured such that 3,500 people can still feel like they're part of a community, to me that is a very quality aspect of a MOOC, creating that social presence among the students, and that that you have a relationship with others that are sharing the same experience as you.
Have any of you ever taught in a MOOC? Taught? No? How about in our audience? Yes? Now, how were those experiences? Just for...
I was a part of a MOOC that had several instructors, so I was a co-instructor of one, and it was difficult to really feel like we were reaching out to everyone. So much of it depended on the individual student's motivation to participate and them really understanding what their particular needs were so that they knew what they were going to go after. But as an instructor, it can be frustrating to feel like I can't really have a student and teacher relationship with, 8,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And how was that the same experience for you, Chuck?
It was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. Okay. So, I mean, what strategies do you think you would apply if you're going to try to make, or how did this group, this 3,500 student course, do things to sort of engage the students?
Well, Coursera does a survey at the beginning asking you, why are you in this course? And that could be a good way to separate the audience in people who are actually going for it or just people who are lurking for fun. And then Coursera also does peer review. When you submit assignments, it's not the teacher that corrects you. You have to correct at least 5 other people, and 5 other people have to correct you. So that creates community because then they give you feedback and say, oh, look, I like this, and etc. But yes, it is hard to create a sense of community and a link with 8,000 people. But there could be other ways. First of all, we have to point out who the person is, because if somebody is willing to participate, there are discussions and etc. If somebody is not willing to, they wouldn't anyway, even if a virtual cafe was there. I have one student in my online classes that she writes like at least 7 to 10 paragraphs for each reply. I said, wow, that's amazing. So that could be somebody who would do well in a MOOC because she has that attitude of, okay, I'm going to click and find out, I'm going to read everybody discussions. But yes, again, I think that considering from the perspective of the audience, they will get what they want out of it, and we can only do our best.
So kind of going away from MOOCs, I'm going to talk about one of the exemplars in online education, which is ASU, and they have a very large online program. So ASU, I think they currently have either 80 or just under 80 online programs, and they've been in the national spotlight quite a bit this summer. Does anybody remember why they were in the national spotlight? Big thing in the news. Yes, what was that?
Starbucks.
Oh, Starbucks, yeah. So any coffee drinkers will know that one. So, that was a model that they used to recruit students, essentially forming a partnership with Starbucks and bringing in students that are Starbucks employees for essentially free education through ASU Online. And that program, I think, just started 2 weeks ago. I think the first group of about 4,000 students are going through that, or 2,000 students. But that was one of the things. But the other kind of news that was kind of popular, NPR did a few stories on this, I remember hearing on the radio, and that was of their 10,000 or so current online students, their graduation rate is only at about 36%. So even though they're considered an exemplar, these online-only programs are experiencing a 36% kind of graduation rate. So this question is going to be for Carol, since you guys are in a fully online How many programs do you have? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, we have 3 schools. Let me think. How many programs? I think there's about 20 programs.
Okay, so about 20 fully online programs.
Yes.
So in your opinion, what do you think, and this is sort of a thought, is maybe the challenge of creating quality and quality consistency is just because there are so many different programs. And you just mentioned you have multiple schools and multiple programs.
That's
So
right.
how do you sort of manage quality across all the different disciplines? And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you're doing that at University of Rockies.
Sure. Yeah, it's an important question, and definitely a challenge, especially when a university is so big like ASU. Imagine. But one of the models that has been successful, and I think this is our model, is the centralized curriculum, which just entails kind of concentrating the resources in working collaboratively with faculty and technologists, educational experts instructional designers, instructional specialists, and sometimes that collaboration is not an easy one. So that's a big challenge. But there are many benefits, and one of them is, again, achieving some consistency. And like Robin was saying, it's good for a student to go into a course and know what they're going to get from one course to the next, to know where to find the resources and the support. So if you get that piece in order, I think you've done a lot to give the consistency. Also, the design, the feel, and the look of the course. I think that's important. And that can be achieved with that collaboration, with that centralized curriculum. So that's a piece. But the biggest challenge is the quality of the content, because a lot of those e-learning specialists are not content experts. You need to have some sort of peer review process that's in place. And I know that Quality Matters has one, and that's another thing that you can leverage is the standards from Quality Matters, and the Sloan Consortium has other standards that are similar. So there's some resources out there to draw from to look at those standards. And also you have to look at, I can separate development from revisions, for example. That's always a challenge. In the development phase, we gather the SMEs, the subject matter experts, and they collaborate so we can ensure that, there's kind of different sets of eyes looking at the content. And the revision process is a little more challenging because courses, tend to have kind of a long life, and you need to make an effort to actually revise that curriculum often. And we're trying to do that on a yearly, basis.
Okay.
So it's challenging. And definitely we leverage Quality Matters. And we have most of our programs are 100% QM, formally QM. And the good thing about those revision review committees is there's one subject matter expert in them. But still, we feel that that's not enough. We have content area coordinators that look at the content on a regular basis. So I think those are some of the elements that can contribute to that quality. But it's definitely challenging, and we continue to work on that.
Mm-hmm. Who else is doing formal Quality Matters reviews at your institutions? Are you?
We are.
You are? And how's that going?
Well, we present in this room next.
Yeah, you're going to talk about that.
Colleague Jackie
Do a plug.
And it's unlike an institution that's building their program from the ground up. We're trying to build Quality Matters into an existing culture,
Mm-hmm.
and it does have its challenges. But we have. I'm an advocate. I don't get paid by Quality Matters, but I am, a true advocate of what they stand for. And I think that I'd say 9 out of 10 faculty that we work with are very receptive, see it as a way to not only to improve that online course, but just their teaching in general. And I really think, having some sort of set standards
It's helpful, yeah.
is really, at an institution that you believe in, whether that be Quality Matters or something that's, a different one, but it really sets the stage for, quality courses. And
consistency. They also offer faculty development and professional development. And what Quality Matters does also is it provides a common language, so everybody can talk about the standards, the things that need to be in there, things like that. But Quality Matters is not enough. For us, we have to actually define what quality is at our institution, and that was kind of a challenging exercise, because we wanted to look at quality at the program level also. And that's definitely more challenging. And Quality Matters actually is coming up with program certification next year that will actually take into account more than just the design of the course. So.
And Quality Matters really focuses on sort of the design of the course.
Correct.
What about delivery as far as quality and delivery? What strategy are you using?
And right now we have instructional specialists that actually go into the courses and, they see, how many posts are there, how often the faculty are responding. So we have some people in place doing that and assistant faculty and students. So it's a little separate than the process that we do in terms of design and revision, but As I'm mentioning, Quality Matters is leading this effort of program certification, and one of the pieces will be teaching. And I've been part of the study group that is crafting the language for this program certification, so I can see how other aspects of quality will be integrated. And one is teaching, the other one is student resources, the other one is, importantly, student success. So in order to have a quality program, you have to have successful students. So that's going to be challenging, but exciting.
And Kim, I mean, I know you guys are doing some sort of a delivery review as well in some areas.
Yeah, and I just wanted to interject, at the University of Denver, we are slowly moving faculty into online, and we are strongly encouraging that faculty take this teaching online workshop that we've developed several years ago, and it's gone very, very well. And relating that to Quality Matters is, when we look at Quality Matters and all the different standards they offer, and certainly the annotations for all those standards, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So faculty who are new to online teaching and learning, we don't want to overwhelm them with all the standards. So what we're trying to do in this teaching online workshop, which is conducted fully online, we're trying to slip in kind of on the sly what we are considering key Quality Matters standards that we think are most important and most essential to at least begin to design a good online course. So we're not overwhelming them with everything, but we've picked out about 23 or 24 key standards. Those are what we're starting with at kind of a grassroots level, blending them into this teaching online workshop. So we're not just plopping Quality Matters on top of it, but we're really integrating Quality Matters as we teach faculty about developing courses and teaching online. But it's been very helpful. To your point, Sharon, too, faculty have said they wish they'd had this 10 years ago. It gives them some structure, some bones to put the meat on, if you will, and so it's been very, very well received.
And I think you have a program in place, too, for the sort of monitoring the faculty interaction with students, not
yes,
the whole university.
Yes, that's at University College, yes.
Do you know a little bit about that program?
No, I don't. I'm
okay.
sorry.
Okay.
I don't.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious how that was going.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention one more thing that you remind me of is that we have a development process that actually incorporates the Quality Matters standards in sort of a template form. So developers are not even aware that the things they're being asked are already aligned with Quality Matters standards. So that's a really good start, and that has provided consistency and has been pretty successful at our institution.
What about our audience? Any thoughts on Quality Matters and applying that in your courses? Has anybody in this room ever gone through a Quality Matters review who's an instructor? Just kind of curious on that perspective. You teach, right? Or yes? Have any of your courses gone through that?
I don't teach online. We have programs that we offer online, but I'm a master reviewer, peer reviewer for quality.
So in your experience going through that, you're interacting with the faculty. How do you kind of keep them from panicking and feeling that this is a, sort of a, I don't want to say an attack, but it's a strong word, but, a judgment of their...
It is a fine line. And we kind of have a mentor, what we call, and I know this can be a bad word in other institutions, but we have what we call a mentor relationship. And so by the time our faculty get to a formal Quality Matters review, they will have passed. Because we have, they either have gone through one of our programs that prepares them, one of our grants, or if they come to us, we mentor them through this process. So they should never get into a formal review and not have it pass.
Okay.
At least that's our goal.
Okay. And so when you're doing it as the master course reviewer, you're working with other institutions as well, or are you doing internal?
Right now it's internal.
Okay.
I do have my name on the list to do external reviews, but right now it's the reviews I've done are internal.
Have any of you done an external review for another institution? Anybody in the room? No? I was kind of curious of what that was like as far as seeing the content of another school and interacting with the faculty from another institution. That'd be kind of interesting to know more about. I'll go ahead and move on to the next question, and this one's going to be for Anne. In higher education, we have this accreditation process, which is really designed to ensure quality of the educational institution and the programs. Thank you so much. And the programs. And of course, when these accreditation bodies and agencies were developed, they were focusing on traditional campus-based courses. And so sometimes they've been kind of eager to adopt, sometimes they've been a little reluctant to work with students that are building or institutions that are building fully online programs. So in your opinion, how do you think accreditation has changed or will change to adequately address quality in fully online degree programs?
I think the accreditors need to, as they're looking at quality, kind of ask themselves the question, what is their relationship with innovation? Are they early adopters, which I would argue no, or are they late adopters? Are they the laggards, let's keep it at the status quo and we only care about the traditional? Whereas if they focus a little bit more on the innovators, the MOOCs, the Coursera's, all of the straighter line, you name it. And innovators tend to, be in the minority at first, but then they change the game eventually. And so will the game change regardless of what, their stance is, whether they are like, yes, let's go down the innovative road. If they don't go down the innovative road, the road may change and leave them on the side of the road by building a new road. And so I think ultimately there will be some changes, whether accreditation jumps into it or gets pulled into it. And so some of those, what I think will happen, and I'd love to hear what you all think would happen, is that as higher education kind of gets disaggregated into course developers and instructors becoming more of the facilitators, and then maybe there's a separate assessor. If that happens, then do we also need to disaggregate the accreditation and move to accrediting outcomes, accrediting competencies, accrediting courses, accrediting third-party providers like Smart Thinking, and having it go back to its traditional roots of being voluntary and being a true stamp of quality. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, and I hope that accreditation organizations decide to become innovative as opposed to being just drug into it. But there's a lot of things that have to happen to get there. And it's not just all on accrediting bodies. It's, uncoupling federal financial aid from being accredited, getting rid of this kind of catch-22 to get, to prove yourself, you have to be accredited. And to be accredited, you have to prove yourself. So it's like the chicken versus the egg type of story. And so I think it'll be interesting.
Any other thoughts from the rest of the panel? Yes?
The last accreditation that I was involved with happened almost 5 years ago because they're up for accreditation again in 2015. And it was for an undergraduate program and a graduate program being accredited at the same time for this college. The undergraduate program was primarily face-to-face, a few online courses. The graduate program was 100% online. We created accounts to give the accreditors access to view and offered to stand by and be available to guide them through, of course. The graduate program was accredited. No one ever entered the online course. Everything was evaluated on what was on paper. And I thought that was very disappointing because I didn't think that you could evaluate that without laying eyes on courses.
Yeah. Well, and so many times the accreditation is based on the inputs, the self-study that is submitted. And so you're accrediting an institution without actually looking at the quality of the courses, whereas in something that's like competency-based education, if you disaggregate the accreditation and say, we're going to accredit competencies or courses that reach certain competencies, then you're more likely to ensure the quality and that the student wants.
And I think that will drive to having somebody fully pursuing what they want without having to take in classes that, like astronomy, doesn't have nothing to do with English for something. So that will be a good way to make sure that somebody is really in the field that they want to be.
Yeah, and I think for that to happen, I think the employers, accreditation needs to be driven somewhat by the employers and what is important to employers, and it doesn't matter if it's a graduate degree, an undergraduate degree, a certificate, an associate's, a badge. It's like there can be, it's like if a badge works for an employer, then by all means, if my child wants to get a job with that employer or that industry and all they need is a badge, I'm happy. I mean, of course, I want my child to go on and get a PhD, but what do I know? So there's a question out there.
Yeah, so I'm at MSU Denver, and I'm glad that you mentioned students' quality too, because one of the things that I haven't heard yet is about what students see as quality. And for MSU Denver, one of our struggles is getting student evaluations to be filled out for online courses. And then how do online evaluations compare with student face-to-face class evaluations? And then how does that impact faculty evaluation for performance? So there's the accreditation, but then there's also how are students feeling and how are faculty serving students, and how do we get all of that feedback?
Great.
So I'm going to repeat the question really quickly for the web audience too. It essentially is talking about assessing student quality through student evaluations and comparing student evaluations for online and face-to-face, and measuring perceptions of quality for those online students from the student perspective. So sorry, go ahead, Carol.
I was going to say that part of a sound assessment plan should always include the student feedback. We include, alumni surveys, end of course surveys to evaluate that, and accreditors look at that. This is the kind of information that you also post on your website to attract students and to see how your institution is doing. So it's definitely something that is crucial.
I'm glad you brought up student quality, or what their expectation is, because when I read that last night, I was thinking, that's an important part of it. I mean, there is the accredited body, but the students are actually, I think, are going to be the ones driving the quality courses. They have a high demand, not only on what's happening in the classroom, but what's happening online. And they're demanding more from the instructor and from the faculty. So I think that they are really going to be driving the whole process and changing the process in the future. Not to give away one of those next questions.
Oh, yeah, you're good. No. So,
adding to that, I think that if we start a course with very high standard, we expose students to what high standards are, so that they know, they become aware of judging, okay, this is not good. I should not take it. Oh, yes, this is the type of course that will give me what I want.
Yeah, and I think as we start using rubrics, not necessarily just quality matters, but whatever your institution is using and whatever standards they are setting, that's the expectation the students are going to expect.
And again, they know that there isn't only this, but that this expectation, and they reach for it, and they become better for it.
So kind of overall perception, accrediting bodies, are they sort of stifling innovation in higher education, or as far as online goes, or are they kind of, like you're saying, kind of pushing us to be more innovative? What do you think?
I think they're a little bit more on the stifling side, because part of it is a little bit self-serving. You're an accredited institution. You pay dues to the very people that are accrediting you.
What's wrong
and
with
I'm
that
like,
picture?
I'm sorry if there's any accreditors out there. There's kind of a need for a system overhaul if we're going to talk about quality and innovation. And so, it's like I have a program that goes through accreditation, and I pay them a fee to come out for the accreditation. But I'm not a dues-paying member, and if I'm a dues-paying institution and that, accrediting agency comes out to accredit me, then is there a conflict of interest? It's like, well, I don't really want to, lose membership. There is that potential. And so I do think they're trying, because all this innovation is happening. It's like what is it, Southern New Hampshire has been accredited for competency-based education. So, I think they're getting there. So I think they're trying to be innovative, but they're rooted in a stifling mechanism.
I actually heard some accreditors speak about this topic. It's interesting because they don't see themselves as wanting to stifle innovation. But what they're saying is, come to me with an idea and be able to prove it that it's a sound idea, and we will definitely go with that. But you have to be able to show evidence that this is going to work, that students will succeed in the end, no matter what is it that you're doing. So I think they're open. I see your point. It might be some kind of conflict of interest there, but I think we need somebody kind of guiding the standards and asking for accountability. So,
But it can be hard if you're, say, I don't know, straighter line. If you're wanting something to be accredited and to prove yourself, to show the evidence, you have to have students. And for students to pay for that course, they need financial aid, maybe. And so, but the financial aid is tied back through the accreditation. So it's like, do we need to kind of uncouple the financial aid piece and have it be like, you know what, we're going to give students can use their money wherever they want and have that. It's like there's a lot of differing opinions, and I don't think that the accrediting people really want to stifle, but there's some roadblocks that if you have to prove yourself first, that's a hard roadblock to jump over.
But other avenues are available now, and I'm talking about Quality Matters again just because I'm involved in that process, but they will offer some form of feedback to the institution before they go into being into an accreditation. So you can test the waters a little bit about how you're doing in certain areas. Because otherwise we're using students as guinea pigs if we're just trying to, try this like the MOOCs. I think in a way we're all guinea pigs taking the MOOCs because there's no accountability there. They want to do their best. They want to use data to improve, but they're not answering to anybody. So.
Well, I heard Ann mention the accreditation of kind of third-party content. Maybe that there should be something like that. So that kind of goes into our next question that I'll have for our panel. And in 2010, there was a report by the Chapman Alliance, and they basically assessed corporate training programs, third-party course content developers, publishers, and how they develop content and what kind of effort went into that. And it was kind of a fascinating report, so I'm going to read some of these numbers. Let's see, their survey was essentially of 249 of these organizations. So you're talking about the Pearson, Learning House, those groups. And they suggested that for every 1 hour in an average level quality course, that for every 1 hour, they put about 79 production hours into that course. And for high quality course, for every 1 hour of online content delivery, they put in 490 hours of work effort, right? So it sort of goes in line with some numbers that we've heard from Blackboard. I think Blackboard recommends about 480 hours of development time for 1 hour of online content development delivery. So knowing that these organizations like the Pearsons and the Learning House and the publishers, who they may be, are putting that kind of work into it. And these are actual numbers, so this is not what they were suggesting they should be doing. These are actual numbers. And of course, we're reaching way past it in higher ed, right? No, just kidding. So there's always this perception that this third-party content may not be as good as the stuff that we're developing in-house, yet they're putting so much effort into developing that. So that's sort of kind of the first thing to think about. And the second, or the real question here is, what steps, and this question is for Kim, what steps should an institution, instructor, instructional designer take to ensure quality standards in third-party materials? So whether that's ebooks, publisher companion sites, course cartridges, anything like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think that's a really good question, particularly in light of what
the survey results that you just shared with us. It's a lot. Obviously, the publishers, the people that make these course packs are putting a lot of time and effort into these materials. But when I was thinking about this question, it kind of came to mind is when you're doing research, you want to ensure that your students are using credible, reliable sources. So some of those same questions obviously apply to the third-party resources and third-party materials. So when I was thinking about this, I kind of came up with looking at this with some critical questions and having those questions drive or underpin the standards or the policies that either an instructor or a department or a university might be interested in developing around third-party materials and resources. So I kind of broke that down into 3 areas. One area is content quality and reliability. Another area is accessibility. And the third area would certainly be cost and technology. So I'll go back, and under the content, quality, and reliability, some of the questions that I think are very worthy of consideration are, does this material meet the quality standards as defined or outlined by either the institution, the department, or even at the individual instructor level? Does it meet your level of quality? And so when you think about that, does that mean just because they're expensive or just because hundreds of hours have been put into producing them? Does that mean that they're robust? Does that mean that they really are well produced? And when we think about, vetting a source, we want to know who are the authors, who made this? Are they credible? Are they reputable? In most cases, they generally are. But when you talk about maybe using free resources or open educational resources, which are kind of come broadly under that third-party thing, you need to be very careful about those kinds of things. So do you know their credentials? Are they from a responsible and reputable source? The other thing that's important to keep in mind regarding content and reliability is the interaction component, and this speaks to the student perspective on these third-party materials. Do the third-party materials allow not only certainly for student-to-content interaction, but do they allow for student-to-student interaction in these third-party materials? And is it possible for the instructor to interact through the third-party materials with the students and with the content? I think those are very good questions because the tendency will be, wow, I've got a course pack, I'm going to plop it out there. They can go have at it. But we tend to forget that student perspective and that interactive component, which is very important. Another thing to consider is, has that content been integrated into a thoughtful and engaging experience for the learner? Again, that means we as instructors, we need to really look at this content and say, what, does this really make sense? Does the content work well together? Another consideration would be, does that content work well with what I've already got in the course? And I think one of the things that's important to consider there in terms of quality is that third-party resource may be presenting content that has a different tone, a different organization scheme, that is different from what you have in the rest of your course and how you present the content and materials. And at some level, that may be confusing for students. Here's this tone and this organization scheme over here, and then, Professor Smith, she kind of presents it a little bit differently. So there may be some dissonance there in terms of the relationship between that third-party material and certainly what the instructor, he or she, has developed him or herself. And the other important aspect of content quality and reliability certainly has to do with the cultural and contextual implications of that third-party material. Is it sensitive to a multicultural audience? Is it sensitive and compassionate towards our international students? And is it material that our international students can understand and possibly relate to? And that speaks to the context of that third-party material. Is it relevant? Is it something a multicultural audience can appreciate? So the next area that I think is important to consider is accessibility, of course. So can our students who maybe have special needs or disabilities have access to this information and be able to use it in a fluid manner that's well integrated with the rest of the course? So generally, the ebooks are compliant with ADA standards, but for some students and in some situations, assistive technology may be difficult with those third-party resources. So you want to be sensitive to what assistive and adaptive technologies are available with these third-party resources, for our students that might have special needs or accommodations, and I think that's an important consideration. The other thing, too, is the course pack may be well vetted and well designed and fully accessible. However, if a part of that course pack or cartridge or ebook resides on a server somewhere, we need to be careful that student data and student information isn't also out there on a third-party server or source, because we could possibly be in conflict with FERPA regulations. So I think that's a little bit of a technical question, but it's something we need to consider is where does this reside, and where's my student data sitting if they're using this third-party information or third-party resource. So we have to pay attention to the FERPA guidelines. And then certainly last but not least are the technical considerations and the cost. Is it reasonable? Do these third-party materials integrate smoothly with the LMS that our university uses? Are passwords needed to go outside and access material? Do we have to work with IT to look at firewall considerations, again, to integrate or work with this outside material? Can students download and save this material on their own? Can they print it? What happens to this material after the class? Is it no longer accessible? And from an instructor perspective, can I figure out if I'm using the latest version of this third-party material? Where do I go to find that information? How do students access this? What about codes and numbers? I remember several times getting inquiries from students for course packs that I was not using, but they were very confused about, am I using it or not using it? And then where do I go to get the information about this? So even though something as simple as where do I go to get this and how do I get into it can cause some confusion and frustration for the students. So I think those are really, really important considerations when you look at third-party sources. And certainly my list and suggestions here is by no means exhaustive, but again, back to those three main things. Let's look at content, the quality of that content, the reliability of that content, the accessibility of that content, and then certainly the technical and cost considerations that go with that third-party content.
Good summary. So, yeah. So, what are some more specifically? You mentioned there's a lot of technical aspects. So, at your institution, you're an instructor. A lot of times, you'll have a difficulty assessing kind of the technical implications, understanding, how the passwords are working, how secure it is, where the data resides. Because a lot of that's not very transparent. A lot of times, you have to dig for that. Same with accessibility. At first glance, something may appear very accessible, but other times, there may be a major error that you're not easily able to spot. So what processes do you have in place at your institution?
I'm not familiar with any really formal process, but what happens is faculty will usually come to the Office of Teaching and Learning and start to ask those questions, and then we can kind of mediate those questions or put them in touch with the people in the University Technology Services who might be better equipped to answer those questions. But I also think it's a matter of getting the word out. I don't know that faculty are asking these questions, and they should be asked. And this goes back to the original question, what about standards and policies would you recommend for the university? And one of my recommendations would be is that maybe we need to call this out a little bit more. This, third-party stuff is great. It can save time, it can save money, and all of those things. But maybe we need to start being a little bit more vocal about, before you run off and glom onto this, here are some really important considerations, and here are some procedures we want you to follow to vet this third-party resource.
Is anybody doing a formal process for vetting third-party resources?
Nope, not a formal process, no, but we're supporting a lot of people who are using publishers' content, and we support that because my experience, and I've been doing this probably with publishers' content for 5 years, is it's far superior to build your own. It's far more interactive, the learning objectives are there, they're solid, but as you said, it's incumbent upon the individual instructor to vet that material and make sure, and we do that together, but we also find that we work, when we know that faculty want to use publishers' content, we start early working with the bookstore to get the message out. If you buy a used book, here's where you're going to get the code, and getting that information in to try to minimize the student distraction with gaining access. And that's probably the biggest thing. But in my experience, the publisher content is screaming along very high quality stuff. Very high quality. Far, far better than what we could, based on the resources we have, build.
So that's a good way to kind of summarize that whole thing. So we kind of went back to what we talked about at the very beginning with the hours and the work they put into it. And sometimes there's this big perception that there may be some major issues, but oftentimes they're actually putting far more resources into that content than we could ever do as institutions.
And one thing to bring up is how well they match with the LMS, because some of our instructors use my math lab, and when you grade there, it doesn't grade indeed well. So I hear a lot of complaints. Do I have to spend 1 million hours
between two different things?
Yes. But then we have another provider that created a shelf for us to copy in D2L. We've already videos and linked quizzes, so all we have to do is watch the videos and look at the questions, change whatever we want, because it's available to us to do so. But they already did the work. They already have the cool videos up there. So, and we don't have to, because again, resources and time, there's only 24 hours in a day, and they have the human power.
So Robbie and Anne and Kim and Carol and Sharon, I want to thank you for being on the panel. We're out of time. Otherwise, I'd love to keep going with this. Good news, though, is that a lot of our panelists will be presenting later on today as well. So if you're stay in this room, you'll later hear more from them. Also during lunch, so Chuck's in your audience today, so Chuck will be delivering the keynote in St. Cajetan's. After the keynote, we're going to be coming back for our lunches, and I'm hoping all of us will be here in the room to have more of this conversation and a little bit more informal and continue the conversation. So thank you again for attending this session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. So thank you.
Thank you.